She rushed into the corporate building wearing her dress inside out, the zipper and tag clearly visible for everyone to see. Little did she know, this fashion disaster would catch the eye of Nicholas Smith, the ice-cold CEO, watching from his window. This isn't just another rags to riches story. When Lily's chaotic energy collides with Nicholas's perfectly ordered world, something unexpected happens. For the first time in years, the emotionless executive laughs, really laughs, setting in motion a love story that begins with coffee spills and ends with a public declaration that shocks the entire company. What if a single wardrobe malfunction could change the entire course of your life? The harsh beeping of Lily Morgan's alarm shattered the quiet of her tiny studio apartment, echoing off the thin walls before she slammed her hand down to silence it. She groaned and rolled over, sunlight already streaming through the cheap blinds she'd installed herself last winter. Her eyes shot open as she glanced at the time, 8:47 a.m. The interview was at 10 a.m. No, no, no! Lily bolted upright, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd set her backup alarm for 7:30, but somehow she'd slept through it. The ancient phone she couldn't afford to replace had probably glitched again, its battery draining overnight. Everything in her life seemed to be running on fumes lately. Her bank account, her energy, her hope. Lily stumbled across the apartment, all 1,200 square feet of it, stepping over a stack of fashion magazines she'd been using for inspiration. Her kitchen counter had transformed into a paper mountain. Electricity bill, final notice. Rent, already 5 days late. Student loan statement, deferred for the third time. And a collection of rejection letters she couldn't bring herself to throw away. Each one a different company, but somehow the same message. While we were impressed with your qualifications, we have decided to pursue other candidates. The irony wasn't lost on her. Graduating at the top of her marketing class 3 years ago, she'd been certain the world was waiting for her creative campaigns and fresh perspective. Her professors had called her a natural talent with exceptional promise. Now, at 26, that promise had curdled into something bitter as she watched former classmates climb corporate ladders while she scrapped for freelance gigs that barely covered her minimal expenses. Lily flung open her refrigerator, revealing a sad collection of condiment packets, half a carton of milk she didn't trust, and a single container of yogurt that had expired 2 days ago. With a sigh, she grabbed the yogurt anyway, spooning it into her mouth as she simultaneously tried to brush her teeth with her other hand. Multitasking had become a survival skill. Her eyes drifted to the counter, where her laptop sat open. Its screen cracked in the corner from when she'd accidentally knocked it off her bed last month. The document displayed showed her portfolio, the one she'd been fine-tuning until 2 a.m. The laptop itself was balanced precariously on top of a stack of ramen noodle packages, her primary food source for the past several months. The contrast was almost poetic, her sophisticated marketing strategies created on a damaged device propped up by 50-cent meals. This one has to work, she muttered to herself, rushing toward the tiny bathroom. Smith Global Group is the one. She'd repeated this mantra before every interview, but this time felt different. The position was perfect. Marketing coordinator for one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The salary would change everything. No more choosing between electricity and dinner. No more ignoring calls from unknown numbers, assuming they were debt collectors. Lily stood under the shower for exactly 90 seconds, long enough to get clean, but short enough to keep her water bill manageable. She wrapped herself in a threadbare towel and darted to her closet, flinging open the doors to reveal a carefully curated collection of secondhand clothes. Her fingers moved frantically through the hangers until they landed on the navy blue dress she'd splurged on 6 months ago. Her interview dress, purchased with the last of her tax return money. It was the only truly professional piece she owned, a simple sheath with a modest neckline and hem that hit just below the knee. She'd hand-washed it after each interview, careful to preserve its shape and color, knowing she couldn't afford to replace it. Today, it was slightly wrinkled from hanging in the humidity of her apartment, but there was no time for steaming. Lily yanked the dress from the hanger, nearly tearing the fabric in her panic. Her wet hair dripped down her back as she hopped around the apartment, one leg in the dress, while simultaneously trying to apply mascara with her free hand. The clock on her microwave, The only timepiece in her apartment that still worked reliably showed 9:12. She would have to run to the subway to make it on time. In her frenzy, Lily failed to notice a critical detail. The dress, in her haste to put it on, had been turned inside out. The size tag now protruded prominently at the neckline, and the zipper, normally concealed at the back, ran awkwardly down her front. The dress's inner seams were exposed, the manufacturer's label visible at her hip. Lily swiped blush across her cheeks, dabbed concealer under the dark circles that testified to countless sleepless nights spent applying for jobs, and ran her fingers through her damp hair. She glanced in the bathroom mirror, but in her rush, she only registered that she was clothed and somewhat presentable. The critical detail of her dress's orientation completely escaped her notice. She grabbed her portfolio, a leather folder she'd found at a thrift store and meticulously restored, and stuffed it with printed samples of her work. Her hand hovered over a granola bar on the counter before deciding against it. The portfolio was more important than breakfast. Besides, if she got this job, she could buy actual groceries again. Real food, not just whatever was on sale or close to expiration. Lily gave her apartment a final sweeping glance. The cramped space had been her home for 3 years, ever since graduation, when her dreams had been as fresh as her diploma. Now, the walls seemed to close in on her with every rejection letter. This interview wasn't just another opportunity. It was escape. It was survival. She slipped her feet into the only pair of heels she owned, black pumps, with the soles already wearing thin, and grabbed her keys. With one final deep breath that did little to calm her racing heart, Lily stepped out into the hallway, locking 3 separate deadbolts behind her. The building wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was what she could afford. As she hurried down the 5 flights of stairs, the elevator had been out of service since February, Lily clutched her portfolio to her chest like a shield. Inside were examples of campaigns she'd created, some for small local businesses who'd paid her in product rather than cash. Others, speculative projects she'd designed to keep her skills sharp during the long stretches between paid work. Each page represented hours of effort, creativity poured out, despite dwindling resources and hope. The morning air hit her face as she burst through the lobby doors and onto the sidewalk. The financial district where Smith Global Group was located sat 15 blocks and 2 subway transfers away. If the trains were running on time, a considerable if in this city, she might just make it with a few minutes to spare. Lily broke into a run, her portfolio clutched in one hand, the other gripping her phone to check the time. She didn't notice the curious glances from passing strangers, some smirking, others looking sympathetic as they observed her inside-out dress. She was too focused on her destination, on the opportunity that awaited her, on the chance to finally turn her life around. Little did she know that her wardrobe malfunction, this simple mistake made in a moment of panic, would soon catch the eye of Nicholas Smith, the notoriously cold-hearted CEO of Smith Global Group. The man whose attention she never intended to grab, the man whose carefully constructed world of order and precision was about to collide with her chaos in ways neither of them could possibly imagine. 52 floors above the city stood a man who had eliminated every trace of disorder from his life. Nicholas Smith hadn't been seen showing genuine emotion in the office for years. His employees called him the Robot behind closed doors, a nickname earned through his emotionless efficiency and mechanical precision. The dawn had barely broken over the city skyline when Nicholas completed reviewing the quarterly earnings report. The clock on his desk read 6:47 a.m., exactly 13 minutes ahead of schedule. He allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, not pleasure, just the clinical acknowledgement that efficiency targets had been met. The penthouse office gleamed in the early morning light, every surface spotless, every item perfectly aligned. The glass desk held precisely 3 items: a sleek laptop, a single black pen, and the earnings report, its corners perfectly aligned with the desk edge. Nicholas straightened his already straight tie and gazed out at the city, awakening below him. He had completed his 5 a.m. workout with military precision, 45 minutes of cardio, followed by 30 minutes of strength training. Never a second, more or less. His protein shake had been consumed at precisely 7:15, the same blend of ingredients he'd calculated for optimal nutritional efficiency years ago. Now, with the quarterly report annotated and his first meeting not scheduled until 8:30. He found himself in the unusual position of having unallocated time. Unscheduled minutes made Nicholas uneasy. Time was a resource to be maximized, not squandered on reflection or idle thought. It was this philosophy that had transformed Smith Global Group from a respectable family business into an international juggernaut under his leadership. The third-generation CEO had stripped away the sentimental inefficiencies his father and grandfather had allowed to flourish, replacing them with ruthless productivity metrics and emotional detachment that tripled profits within his first 5 years. The Smith Global Group headquarters mirrored its leader's personality in every aspect. 52 floors of glass and chrome, rising like a perfect monolith above the financial district. The building's intimidating architecture featured sharp angles and reflective surface that revealed nothing of what happened inside, while projecting an image of impenetrable strength. Employees called it the Ice Palace when they thought no one important was listening. The comparison was apt. The temperature inside was kept at a precise 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit, Nicholas's calculated optimal temperature for productivity. His executive assistant, Ethan, would arrive at precisely 7:30 a.m., as he had every workday for the past 4 years. Nicholas knew without checking that Ethan would have triple-checked every detail before presenting anything for his review. The last assistant had been dismissed for bringing him coffee that was 2 degrees cooler than the specified temperature. Some called it harsh. Nicholas considered it maintaining standards. The executive floor operated under a palpable tension, with team members moving with careful precision, conversations hushed, and laughter non-existent. His executive team walked on eggshells, meticulously preparing for any interaction with him, knowing that a single misstep could mean immediate termination. Nicholas had built this culture deliberately. Emotion led to inefficiency, and inefficiency was the enemy of success. He'd fired a vice president last quarter for allowing a presentation to run 3 minutes over its allotted time slot. Despite the rigidity, or perhaps because of it, Smith Global Group had become a powerhouse. Its stock had risen 347% since Nicholas took control, making him worth hundreds of millions on paper. Yet, the success came with an unexpected side effect. The further the company's value climbed, the more Nicholas retreated into his controlled environment, eliminating variables and human unpredictability wherever possible. His meetings were scheduled in precise 30-minute increments, with no room for deviation. Each began exactly on time and ended with exactly 1 minute remaining for participants to gather their materials and exit before the next meeting commenced. Nicholas considered this minute of transition time to be a generous accommodation to human inefficiency. His calendar was color-coded by meeting type, with appropriate buffers built in for email responses and decision-making. Spontaneity had been systematically eliminated from his professional existence. The rumors about his emotional detachment weren't exaggerated. The marketing director had once attempted to track the last time anyone had seen Nicholas smile genuinely at work. The informal office pool had reached 347 days before someone from legal advised them to discontinue the count for liability reasons. The truth was, Nicholas himself couldn't remember the last time he'd felt authentic amusement or joy. These emotions served no productive purpose in his carefully constructed world. "Mr. Smith," Ethan's voice came through the intercom, precisely on schedule. "Your 8:30 is prepared in conference room. The projections for the Asian market expansion have been updated with this morning's numbers." "Thank you, Ethan," Nicholas responded, his voice betraying no warmth or appreciation, merely acknowledging the information had been received. Nicholas turned from the window to gather his laptop, his movements economical and precise. Yet before he could step away, something unusual caught his attention from the street below, a flash of movement that disrupted the orderly flow of suited professionals streaming into office buildings. He paused, an uncharacteristic hesitation in his precisely calibrated day. For reasons he couldn't immediately analyze, Nicholas found himself stepping closer to the window, watching as a young woman sprinted down the sidewalk, clutching what appeared to be a portfolio to her chest, narrowly avoiding collisions with pedestrians. Something about her was off. The morning light, revealed what dozens of passers-by had already noticed. Her dress was completely inside out, the tag flapping visibly behind her, and what appeared to be a zipper running down her front instead of her back. Nicholas felt an unfamiliar sensation form in his chest, a tightness that wasn't unpleasant. The woman collided with a coffee cart, sending cups flying in all directions. The chaos should have repulsed him, should have confirmed his belief in the superiority of order and control. Instead, he found himself continuing to watch as she frantically attempted to help clean up while checking her watch repeatedly, completely oblivious to her wardrobe malfunction. A group of impeccably dressed businesswomen gathered nearby, pointing and whispering behind manicured hands. The woman checked her face in a compact mirror, apparently believing that was the source of the attention she was receiving. Nicholas observed her confused expression as she wiped at non-existent smudges, still completely unaware of her inside-out dress. As the disheveled woman approached the entrance to his building, Nicholas felt something entirely foreign to his carefully regulated existence. His lips twitched upward, almost imperceptibly. The sensation was so unfamiliar he nearly raised his hand to his mouth to check what was happening. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Nicholas Smith was fighting the urge to smile. The realization unsettled him deeply. Emotion was inefficient. Amusement served no productive purpose. He had built his empire on the elimination of such unpredictable human responses. Yet, he remained at the window, watching as the security guard gave the woman an odd look, but allowed her to enter the building below. "Mr. Smith?" Ethan's voice came through the intercom again, an unusual note of concern in his tone. "Your meeting begins in 3 minutes. Shall I inform them you're running behind?" Nicholas realized he had been standing at the window for nearly 5 minutes, an unprecedented deviation from his schedule. "No," he replied, his voice regaining its usual controlled tone. "I'll be there, momentarily." Yet as he turned from the window, the emptiness he'd been systematically ignoring for years suddenly felt palpable. His perfectly ordered world, with its predictable outcomes and controlled variables, had produced remarkable success, but something essential seemed to be missing, something the chaotic woman with her inside-out dress appeared to possess. Despite her evident lack of order or precision, the hollowness in Nicholas's chest collided with an unfamiliar warmth as he watched the spectacle below. Could it be that in all his calculated efficiency, he had mathematically removed the very elements that made life worth living, the beautiful disasters that no spreadsheet could quantify? The financial district sidewalk pulsed with its usual morning rhythm, a synchronized dance of briefcases, coffee cups, and purposeful strides. But among this perfectly orchestrated human traffic moved one discordant note, a young woman clutching a portfolio to her chest, as if it contained state secrets rather than resume paper. Lily dodged between suited figures, her eyes flicking repeatedly to her watch, her free hand occasionally attempting to smooth her hair, which had begun to rebel against her hurried styling. She was close, so close, to Smith Global Group's imposing entrance. The gleaming skyscraper loomed just 3 blocks ahead, its mirrored surface reflecting the morning sun with intimidating perfection. If she could just maintain this pace without incident, she might actually make it on time. Pedestrians parted instinctively before her determined stride, sensing her urgency, like animals before an approaching storm. And then it happened. The coffee cart appeared around the corner, a mobile outpost of caffeine being maneuvered into its daily position by a vendor who never expected the human missile heading directly toward him. Lily saw it a second too late, her attempt to pivot, sending her careening into the cart's edge. Time seemed to slow as paper cups launched skyward, coffee erupting in elegant arcs that defied gravity momentarily before raining down on the immaculate sidewalk, the vendor's apron, and several unfortunate bystanders who hadn't retreated quickly enough. "I'm so sorry," Lily gasped, dropping to her knees beside the vendor who stared in shock at the caffeinated carnage. "Here, let me help." Her hands moved frantically, gathering scattered lids and napkins while checking her portfolio for damage. A circle formed around the scene, business people stepping back to protect their designer shoes and pressed suits, watching with expressions ranging from annoyed to amused. The vendor recovered his voice. "Lady, what were you thinking? You just destroyed my morning setup." His exasperation was palpable as he surveyed the damage. "I'll pay for everything, I promise," Lily assured him, digging through her purse while balancing the portfolio under her arm. "I'm just running late for an interview," and, as she spoke, a group of polished businesswomen passing by suddenly paused, their perfectly lipsticked mouths forming small O's of surprise before leaning toward each other in a huddle of whispers. One of them pointed discreetly, eyebrows raised, while another unsuccessfully tried to suppress a smile behind manicured fingers. "Is she serious right now?" one whispered just loudly enough to be heard. "Someone should tell her," another responded with barely concealed amusement. Lily caught these fragments as she handed the vendor what little cash she had, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She glanced down at herself, checking for coffee stains, but found none significant enough to explain the stares and whispers that seemed to follow her as she continued her journey toward Smith Global Group. She quickly wiped at her face, checking her fingers for evidence of smudged mascara or lipstick, but found nothing. The attention continued as she approached the massive corporate building. A businessman on his phone stopped mid-sentence to stare. A courier delivering packages did a double-take so dramatic it nearly gave him whiplash. Even a dog being walked by a professional dog walker seemed to look at her with judgment. Lily's confidence, already fragile from months of rejections, began to crumble further under this inexplicable scrutiny. What was wrong? Had she forgotten pants entirely and was walking around in only a shirt? Had she sprouted a second head? The possibilities raced through her mind, each more absurd than the last, yet none explaining the reactions she was receiving. The security guard at Smith Global Group's entrance gave her the oddest look of all as she approached, his professional demeanor briefly cracking as his eyes widened slightly. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then seemed to reconsider, simply nodding her toward the check-in desk. Instead, "I have an interview at 10 o'clock, Lily informed the receptionist, attempting to sound composed, despite her racing heart and the lingering embarrassment from her coffee catastrophe. "Lily Morgan, for the marketing assistant position." The receptionist's eyes traveled from Lily's face down to her dress and back up again, a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. "Of course, please have a seat. HR will be with you shortly." 52 floors above this interaction, Nicholas Smith stood transfixed at his window, having witnessed the entirety of Lily's chaotic journey to his building. What had started as a momentary distraction, a flash of movement drawing his eye from the quarterly projections on his tablet, had evolved into several minutes of unscheduled observation. His expression, typically as immobile as the building's foundation, underwent a remarkable transformation as he watched. First came annoyed curiosity at the disruption below. Then his eyes narrowed as he processed what he was seeing. A young woman wearing a dress completely inside out, the manufacturer's tag flapping proudly between her shoulder blades, the zipper running awkwardly down her front instead of back. The contrast between her obvious rush and complete unawareness of her appearance created a paradox that disrupted his orderly thought processes. Then came the coffee cart collision, a small disaster unfolding in real time that should have confirmed his long-held belief that chaos was inefficient and counterproductive. But as he watched her frantic attempts to help, her genuine distress at the situation she'd created, something unexpected happened inside Nicholas Smith, a feeling he hadn't experienced in so long that he almost didn't recognize it. The corner of his mouth twitched, his chest felt strange, lighter somehow, and then it happened. A sound escaped him that startled even himself. Nicholas Smith burst into laughter. It began as a chuckle that he tried to suppress, then evolved into full, uncontrollable laughter that bent him slightly forward, his hand pressed against the window for support. His assistant Ethan, entering with documents requiring immediate attention, froze in the doorway, documents clutched to his chest. "Mr. Smith, are you okay?" Ethan asked, genuine concern in his voice. In 4 years, he had never witnessed anything resembling this behavior from his employer. Nicholas struggled to compose himself, but each time he glanced back at the window, remembering the woman with her inside-out dress, arguing earnestly with his receptionist, a new wave of laughter overtook him. This foreign emotion crashed through him like a tidal wave, washing away years of careful control. The cold demeanor that had earned him the nickname, the Robot, among his employees, cracked like thin ice under spring sunlight. For the first time in what felt like forever, Nicholas felt something genuine and unplanned, a reaction that no spreadsheet could have predicted, no algorithm could have calculated. It was as though this woman with her fashion mishap had, without knowing it, reached across the divide between her chaotic world and his ordered one to deliver a wake-up call he hadn't known he needed. "Ethan," Nicholas said when he finally recovered enough to speak, wiping at his eyes. "Who is interviewing for positions today?" Ethan, still staring as if his boss had been replaced by an alien imposter, consulted his tablet. "There are 7 interviews scheduled for various departments. HR is handling all of them." Nicholas straightened his tie, a decision forming with unusual spontaneity. "Call down to reception. The woman who just arrived, the one wearing her dress inside out. I want her brought directly to my office." "Sir?" Ethan's professional mask slipped completely. "You want to interview a candidate yourself? Someone who can't dress properly?" Nicholas turned from the window, something new reflecting in his eyes. "Immediately, Ethan. Before HR gets to her." In the executive suite of Smith Global Group, a sound as rare as a solar eclipse rippled through the hallways. Nicholas Smith was laughing, not the practiced chuckle he deployed at board meetings or the polite response to investors' jokes, but genuine, uncontrolled laughter that bent him at the waist and brought tears to his eyes. What was it about this disheveled woman that had accomplished what no one else had managed in nearly a decade? The transformation had been instantaneous. One moment, Nicholas stood at his window with his typical analytical detachment, cataloging the woman's chaotic approach as another example of the disorder he'd built his empire opposing. The next, as the full absurdity of her presentation registered, the prominent care tag flapping between her shoulder blades, the zipper track clearly visible along her spine instead of hidden at the back, something within him fractured. It started as a twitch at the corner of his mouth, a foreign sensation, muscles moving without his conscious permission. Then came a sound he barely recognized as his own, a short, startled "ha" that seemed to surprise him as much as it would have stunned his employees. The single laugh broke something loose inside him, like a boulder dislodging from a mountainside, starting an unstoppable avalanche. When Ethan appeared at the doorway with the morning's contract revisions, he found his employer, the man employees called the Robot, behind his back, doubled over at the window, shoulders shaking with unrestrained mirth. The stack of papers slipped from Ethan's fingers, scattering across the immaculate floor. In 4 years of perfect punctuality and meticulous service, he had never witnessed anything remotely like this. "Sir?" Ethan ventured, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter this impossible moment. "Are you all right?" Nicholas held up one hand, unable to form words, as another wave of laughter overtook him. He gestured toward the window, drawing his assistant over to witness the source of his breakdown. Below, the woman was now engaged in animated conversation with the building's security guard, arms waving expressively, still oblivious to her wardrobe malfunction. "Oh my," Ethan murmured, his own lips twitching slightly before professional decorum reasserted itself. "Should I call security to escort her out?" Nicholas attempted to compose himself, straightening his tie and clearing his throat. But the moment his gaze drifted back to the window, he caught sight of the woman, now arguing with the receptionist, who appeared to be discreetly trying to inform her about her dress. The woman kept pointing emphatically at her resume, completely missing the receptionist's subtle gestures toward her back. Nicholas dissolved into fresh peals of laughter. Word spread quickly through the executive floor. Heads poked cautiously from doorways. Whispers raced down hallways. Had someone actually heard laughter? Real laughter? Coming from Nicholas Smith's office? 3 senior vice presidents congregated by the water cooler, exchanging theories in hushed tones. "Maybe he finally fired Johnson from accounting," suggested one. "Could be a gas leak," offered another, only half joking. "Perhaps he's finally snapped under the pressure," the third whispered, glancing nervously toward the corner office. By now, the entire executive team was finding increasingly transparent excuses to pass by Nicholas's office. The marketing director suddenly needed to personally deliver a report that could have been emailed. The chief financial officer discovered an urgent need to discuss a minor budget variance. Each departed with the same stunned expression after glimpsing their CEO struggling to regain his legendary composure. Nicholas made several attempts to pull himself together. He straightened papers that didn't need straightening. He adjusted his already perfect tie. He even attempted to recall the quarterly numbers that had occupied his mind just minutes earlier. But each time he glanced out the window, catching sight of the continuing drama below, fresh laughter bubbled up from some long-sealed wellspring inside him. For the first time in years, Nicholas felt something beyond the relentless drive for efficiency that had defined his existence. This unexpected emotion washing through him was both foreign and strangely familiar, like remembering a childhood pleasure long forgotten. It wasn't just amusement at the woman's predicament. It was a recognition of something vibrant and authentic that had been missing from his carefully controlled world. Ethan remained frozen near the door, clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield, witnessing what many in the company would consider a more shocking event than if the building had suddenly lifted off and begun orbiting the moon. His mind raced through possible responses. Should he call for medical assistance? Pretend nothing unusual was happening? Quietly close the door and inform the executive team that all meetings would be postponed indefinitely? Before he could decide, Nicholas did something even more unprecedented. He reached for his phone, pressing the button for the reception desk with a decisiveness that contradicted his still watery eyes and flushed face. "Jane," he said to the receptionist, his voice carrying a warmth Ethan had never heard before. "The woman in the inside-out dress who just entered the building. I want her brought directly to my office. Immediately." The receptionist's confusion was audible, even through the speaker. "Sir? Do you mean the Morgan interview? She's scheduled with HR this morning for the marketing coordinator position." "I'm aware of the schedule," Nicholas replied, a hint of his usual authority returning, though, undermined by the lingering amusement in his tone. "Change it. Bring her up now." "But sir, the protocol for—" "Consider the protocol suspended in this case." Ethan's eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. Nicholas Smith, the man who had built an empire on the bedrock of unwavering protocols, was casually dismantling his own system because of a woman in a backwards dress. As Nicholas ended the call, he caught sight of his assistant's stunned expression, and something remarkable happened. He smiled at him, not the tight, controlled expression he deployed strategically during negotiations, but a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Ethan, clear my calendar until noon," he said, straightening his cuffs with renewed purpose. "All of it, sir? Even the board call?" Ethan asked, struggling to keep his voice steady in the face of this seismic shift in the natural order. "Especially the board call," Nicholas confirmed, moving to his desk and quickly opening his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the company's applicant tracking system. What was her name? Morgan. Lily Morgan. He scanned the resume quickly, nodding to himself as if confirming something important. "You're interested in a marketing coordinator candidate?" Ethan ventured, trying to make sense of this unprecedented situation. In 4 years, Nicholas had never personally interviewed anyone below director level. "I'm interested in someone who can enter our building with her dress completely inside out and still argue her way past security with more confidence than most of our executive team displays during quarterly reviews," Nicholas replied, a ghost of laughter returning to his voice. The executive who had built his reputation on cold calculation and merciless efficiency was making a decision based entirely on an emotional response, a spontaneous, unquantifiable feeling that this chaotic woman represented something his ordered world desperately needed. It defied every principle that had guided his career, and yet it felt more right than any meticulously analyzed business decision he'd made in years. As the elevator indicator showed movement from the lobby, Nicholas straightened his already immaculate desk and made a final attempt to compose his features into something resembling his usual impassive expression. But the warmth remained in his eyes, a crack in the perfect facade that had defined him for so long. The elevator doors closed with a soft whisper of finality, trapping Lily Morgan in the polished metal box with Jane from reception, who kept glancing at her with an expression Lily couldn't quite decipher. The mirrored walls reflected Lily's anxious face from multiple angles as the floor indicator began its steady climb past numbers she hadn't expected to see. 25, 26, 27. There must be some mistake, Lily said, clutching her portfolio tighter against her chest. My interview's with HR. I'm applying for the marketing coordinator position. Jane shifted uncomfortably, her perfectly manicured fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blazer. No mistake. Mr. Smith specifically requested to see you personally. Mr. Smith? Lily's voice rose an octave. As in, the CEO? Yes, Jane confirmed, her eyes darting to Lily's dress and then quickly away. A cold wave of anxiety washed over Lily. CEOs didn't personally interview entry-level marketing coordinators. Something was wrong. Had she inadvertently offended someone important? Was she being brought upstairs for some kind of public reprimand? Her mind raced through the events of the morning, trying to identify what catastrophic error might have caught the attention of the company's top executive. Jane stood frozen beside Lily, trapped in a silent moral quandary. The receptionist's gaze kept drifting to the glaring tag protruding from Lily's neckline, the inside seams visible along her shoulders. In her 8 years at Smith Global Group, Jane had internalized the unspoken corporate rule that appearance was everything. A backwards dress in this environment wasn't just a fashion faux pas, it was career suicide. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Would mentioning the dress be an act of kindness or cruelty? The woman was already nervous. Pointing out her wardrobe malfunction now might completely destroy what little confidence she had left. Yet saying nothing felt like sending a lamb to slaughter. The executive floor would devour this poor girl alive. The elevator continued its relentless ascent as Jane wrestled with her conscience. Floor 40, 41, 42. Lily caught another glimpse of herself in the mirrored wall. Her hair had mostly held its professional styling despite her morning rush, and her makeup, though minimal, looked presentable. Nothing about her reflection explained why she was being summoned to the executive suite. She tilted her head, examining her face for any embarrassing remnants of breakfast or toothpaste that might have prompted this unusual deviation from protocol. Finding nothing, she adjusted her portfolio and stood a little straighter, desperately trying to project confidence she didn't feel. It's unusual, Jane finally said, breaking the tense silence. Mr. Smith doesn't typically... She trailed off, reconsidering her words. Company loyalty won out over brutal honesty. Just be direct. Don't waste his time. Lily nodded gratefully for this small crumb of advice, completely missing the receptionist's continued glances at her backwards dress. The elevator slowed as it approached the 50th floor, and Lily's stomach lurched in response, partly from the mechanical deceleration and partly from the growing realization that she was utterly unprepared for whatever awaited her. The doors slid open to reveal a world of pristine white marble, gleaming glass, and hushed efficiency. Executives in impeccably tailored suits moved with purpose across the floor, their conversations conducted in muted tones that somehow conveyed power more effectively than shouting ever could. Alongside them, assistants in perfectly pressed attire carried tablets and coffee cups, their movements synchronized to their superiors' needs with clockwork precision. The stark contrast between this world and Lily's disheveled state couldn't have been more pronounced. Her worn pumps squeaked slightly against the polished floor as she followed Jane, drawing subtle but unmistakable glances from passing executives. Though no one stared outright, Lily felt their collective awareness of her presence, a disruption in their carefully ordered environment, like a pebble causing ripples in a still pond. That's her? A whispered question from a corner office drifted across the floor. The one he's been waiting for, came the hushed reply. Canceled the board call and everything. Lily's confusion deepened. People were emerging from offices now, finding sudden reasons to retrieve documents or confer with colleagues, their curious eyes following her progress across the floor. A silver-haired man in a corner office didn't even attempt subtlety, standing in his doorway with arms crossed, openly staring as if she were an exhibit in a museum. What's happening? Lily whispered to Jane. "Why is everyone looking at me?" Jane hesitated again, caught between professional discretion and basic human kindness. "Mr. Smith doesn't usually interact with new hires. Or anyone, really." "Then why?" "No one knows," Jane said quietly. "That's why they're looking." As they approached a set of imposing double doors at the end of the hallway, a tall, slender man rose from behind a desk, positioned like a sentry. His expression was a masterpiece of controlled surprise as he took in Lily's appearance. "Ethan," Jane said with a nod. "This is Lily Morgan. Mr. Smith is expecting her." Ethan's eyebrows rose fractionally before professional composure reasserted itself. "Yes, he mentioned you would be bringing her up." His gaze lingered on Lily's dress, but like Jane, he said nothing about it. "He's just finishing a call. You can wait here." Jane nodded to Lily and retreated, leaving her standing awkwardly before Ethan's desk. In the silence that followed, Lily became acutely aware of the soft murmurs spreading across the floor behind her. Is that really her? What does he see in her? Never seen him laugh before today. Lily turned slightly, catching fragments of conversations that made no sense to her. The whispers immediately ceased, replaced by sudden interest in computer screens and paperwork. She turned back to find Ethan studying her with undisguised curiosity. "You're scheduled with HR," he stated, rather than asked. "Yes," Lily confirmed, relief flooding through her that someone finally acknowledged the apparent mix-up. "There's been some confusion. I'm here for the marketing coordinator position." "Not anymore," Ethan said cryptically, his phone buzzing before he could elaborate. He listened briefly, then nodded. "Yes, sir. She's here." He placed the receiver down and gestured toward the double doors. "He'll see you now." Lily stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. "But I don't understand." "Neither do we," Ethan said, with surprising candor. "But when Nicholas Smith asks to see someone, questioning why isn't part of the equation." He rose and moved to open one of the heavy doors. "Good luck, Ms. Morgan. You've already accomplished the impossible by making him laugh. Perhaps you can manage another miracle." Before Lily could respond, she found herself being gently but firmly ushered toward the door. The hushed executive floor seemed to hold its collective breath as she stepped forward, clutching her portfolio like a shield. Standing before the threshold to Nicholas Smith's office, Lily took a deep, steadying breath and tried to compose herself. She had no idea she was about to meet the CEO rather than a hiring manager. No clue that her inside-out dress had been the catalyst for this unprecedented meeting. No understanding of how completely her life was about to change when those doors opened. Option 3 captured the essence of the moment perfectly. Nicholas Smith could predict markets and control billion-dollar deals, but he never saw Lily Morgan coming. As those imposing double doors opened to Nicholas's office, Lily stepped into a world so pristine it seemed almost clinical. White walls, minimalist furniture, and a desk so immaculately organized it looked untouched by human hands. This was the sanctuary of a man who had built an empire on order and control, and Lily was about to introduce something his sterile kingdom had never encountered: authentic, unfiltered chaos. Nicholas Smith sat behind his expansive white desk, his expression an unusual mixture of amusement and fascination. For a man known throughout the business world for his emotional control, this subtle play of expression was equivalent to another person rolling on the floor, laughing. His lips twitched slightly as he took in the full spectacle of Lily's inside-out dress, up close. The tag, hanging defiantly at her neckline, the exposed zipper running down her front instead of her back. Lily misinterpreted his barely contained amusement as judgment. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she nervously took the seat across from him, convinced she was facing disapproval rather than unprecedented interest. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking, but the tremor was unmistakable when Ethan appeared with a delicate porcelain cup of coffee, placing it on the coaster before her with practiced precision. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Morgan," Nicholas began, his voice smoother than she expected from someone nicknamed the Robot, "though I believe you were originally scheduled with our HR department." "Yes, sir, for the marketing coordinator position," Lily replied, her voice surprisingly steady despite her internal turmoil. She waited for him to comment on her appearance, to acknowledge the elephant in the room, her fashion disaster, but he simply studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. Instead of launching into standard interview questions about her 5-year plan or greatest weaknesses, Nicholas asked, "Tell me about your thesis on emotional marketing in the digital age." It's not often someone challenges the established quantitative models so effectively. Lily blinked in surprise. He had read her thesis? The CEO of Smith Global Group had taken time to research her academic work? This unexpected knowledge threw her further off balance, but it also ignited her passion. As she began explaining her research, her hands came alive, gesturing to emphasize her points about authenticity in marketing strategies. The data showed that consumers respond more favorably to campaigns that trigger an emotional. Her hand swept outward to illustrate her point, catching the edge of her coffee cup. The world seemed to slow down as the dark liquid arced through the air in an elegant parabola before splashing across Nicholas's pristine white desk. Horror washed over her as coffee spread across important-looking documents, creating a rapidly expanding brown stain on what appeared to be financial projections. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, jumping to her feet and frantically searching her pockets for tissues or napkins. Finding nothing, she grabbed her purse and upended it on the edge of his desk, desperate for anything to stop the coffee from reaching the carpet. Out tumbled her wallet, keys, phone with its cracked screen, and mortifyingly, a crumpled grocery list that unfurled itself like a surrender flag. The words, "cheap ramen," the $10 one kind, and "discount toilet paper," not the sandpaper one again, were clearly visible in her hasty handwriting. Nicholas rose from his chair, but instead of the cold fury she expected, his movements were calm and measured. He reached for a box of tissues, handing her several before taking some himself. As they worked together to blot the spreading coffee, Lily wanted nothing more than for the floor to open up and swallow her whole. "I've completely ruined everything," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Those documents are just quarterly projections?" Nicholas finished for her, his tone lacking the sharpness she anticipated. "I have digital copies." When she dared to look up, what she saw in his face stunned her. There wasn't irritation or professional detachment. There was something altogether different, something that resembled the way a person might look at a natural phenomenon, both destructive and beautiful, like a lightning storm or a crashing wave. This cascade of chaos, the inside-out dress, the coffee spill, the embarrassing grocery list, was completely foreign to his ordered existence. Yet instead of rejecting it, he seemed almost transfixed by the authenticity of her disaster. It was as if he were witnessing something he'd forgotten existed in his climate-controlled, precisely scheduled world, unscripted human reality. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the same corner of a coffee-soaked document. The contact lasted only a second, but both froze momentarily, a current of unexpected awareness passing between them. Nicholas pulled back first, straightening to his full height, as Lily hastily gathered the contents of her purse, shoving the humiliating grocery list out of sight. "I should go," she said quietly, dignity in tatters. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry for the mess." Nicholas watched her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, yet somehow softer than before. Then he said something that defied all corporate logic and his own carefully constructed reputation. "I'd like to offer you a position, Ms. Morgan." Lily, halfway out of her chair, sank back down in shock. "Excuse me?" "Not as a marketing coordinator," he continued, moving back to his seat with unusual grace for someone so tall. "As my personal assistant." The silence that followed was heavy with confusion. Lily stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Your personal assistant? But I just spilled coffee all over your desk, and I'm wearing my dress inside out." The realization that she'd just acknowledged her wardrobe malfunction made her cheeks burn anew. A hint of a genuine smile touched Nicholas's lips. "Do you know what I've been surrounded by for the past decade, Ms. Morgan? People who anticipate my every thought, who calculate their every word before speaking, who would rather die than show imperfection in my presence." He gestured to the coffee stain spreading across his desk. "This is the most honest interaction I've had in years." The psychological transformation happening before Lily's eyes was remarkable. With each word, Nicholas seemed to shed layers of corporate armor, revealing glimpses of a man who had been buried beneath protocols and expectations. His next words confirmed this profound shift. "I just want real people," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice startling them both. It was a confession that seemed to surprise him as much as it did her, an unexpected moment of authenticity from a man renowned for his emotional detachment. For the first time that morning, Lily felt something beyond embarrassment and anxiety. She felt understood. Her chaotic entrance had somehow pierced through years of corporate conditioning, creating an unexpected connection that transcended professional norms. "The job pays twice what the marketing position offered," Nicholas added, his businesslike tone returning, though something had fundamentally changed in the atmosphere between them. "You would start immediately." Option 2 perfectly captured the moment. As Lily sat stunned by Nicholas's proposition, she couldn't help but wonder if this powerful man was playing some elaborate joke at her expense. Most CEOs would have security escort out someone who created such havoc. So what did Nicholas Smith see in her disasters that made him want to bring her closer rather than push her away? The coffee stains spread across the pristine white desk like a Rorschach test, revealing more about Nicholas Smith than about Lily Morgan. She stared at the dark puddles with a hollow feeling in her stomach, watching as they seeped into the edge of her now ruined resume. The silence between them felt charged with an uncomfortable electricity, broken only by the soft whir of the building's ventilation system. "I should go," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible as she reached for her bag. "I'm clearly wasting your time." Her fingers trembled slightly as she gathered her belongings, mentally calculating how many more rejection emails she could endure before giving up on her career aspirations entirely. This interview would certainly take first place in her personal hall of shame, a trophy she never wanted to win. Nicholas remained silent, but his eyes never left her face. For the first time in years, he found himself genuinely intrigued by another person. The meticulously organized CEO had built his empire on predictability and precision, surrounding himself with executives who rehearsed their remarks and calculated their every expression before entering his office. Yet here was someone who defied every rule of his carefully constructed world. And somehow, the chaos she brought didn't repulse him. It awakened something. "Your presentation at the National Marketing Conference last year," Nicholas said suddenly, breaking the silence. "The one about emotional connection in digital spaces. That was your work, wasn't it?" Lily paused, her hand frozen midway through collecting the scattered contents of her purse. "You know about that?" "I make it my business to know about innovative thinking in every industry," he replied, his tone matter-of-fact, yet somehow softer than before. "Your approach challenged conventional wisdom. You argued that metrics and analytics were meaningless without the human element." As he spoke, Lily caught her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window behind him and felt a fresh wave of mortification wash over her. The garment tag protruded from her neckline like a flag of surrender, and the exposed zipper running down her front confirmed what she had been too rushed to notice this morning. Her dress was completely inside out. "Oh my God," she whispered, her face flushing crimson as one hand instinctively flew to her neck. "My dress, I was running late and must have..." Her words tumbled out in a panicked stream as she tried to explain the unexplainable. "The elevator in my building is broken, and I had to take 2 subway transfers. And She stopped abruptly, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I'm sorry. For everything. The dress, the coffee, the grocery list. I'll just go." But Nicholas wasn't laughing at her discomfort. Instead, his expression had transformed into something Lily couldn't quite read. Determination mingled with curiosity, as if he'd discovered a rare specimen he needed to study further. "Ms. Morgan," he interrupted, his voice cutting through her apologies with a precision that had made him famous in boardrooms across the globe. "I'd like to offer you a position." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again as she tried to process his words. "The marketing coordinator role?" she finally managed, certain she had misheard. "No," Nicholas replied, leaning forward in his chair. "I want you to be my personal assistant." The absurdity of the proposition hung in the air between them. Personal assistant to Nicholas Smith, the man whose reputation for perfectionism was legendary, whose previous assistants probably graduated at the top of their class from Ivy League schools and never had a hair out of place, let alone an inside-out dress. "That's not funny," Lily said quietly, her dignity finally asserting itself through the embarrassment. "I don't need charity, Mr. Smith. Charity is the last thing I'm offering," he responded, standing up and walking around to her side of the desk. "Do you know what my company is filled with, Ms. Morgan? People who mirror exactly what they think I want to see and hear. My executives spend more time analyzing my reactions than innovating. My previous assistants anticipated my needs so thoroughly that they became practically invisible." He gestured toward the coffee stains. "When was the last time something unexpected happened in this office? When was the last time someone showed me something authentic rather than rehearsed?" Lily studied his face, searching for signs of mockery, but finding none. "You can't seriously want to hire me because I spilled coffee on your desk and wore my clothes wrong. I want to hire you because of what your research demonstrated. That human connection matters more than superficial perfection," Nicholas clarified. "And because, in the past 30 minutes, you've shown more genuine personality than I've seen in this office in years. The professional world has become sterile, Ms. Morgan. People like you, people who bring their full, imperfect selves to the table, are increasingly rare." The research about complementary differences in professional relationships suddenly made perfect sense. Nicholas wasn't looking for another polished cog in his corporate machine. He was seeking someone whose strengths complemented his weaknesses, whose chaotic energy might balance his rigid approach. "Your unpredictability and my organizational skills could form a highly effective partnership," he continued, echoing the concept without realizing it. "Your authenticity could help create a more innovative and human-centered work environment here, something this company desperately needs." Lily still looked skeptical. "What exactly would I be doing as your assistant, besides spilling things and wearing my clothes incorrectly?" A hint of self-deprecating humor crept into her voice. "You'd be managing my schedule, coordinating with department heads, attending meetings with me, and most importantly, bringing your perspective to situations where everyone else is afraid to speak truth to power," Nicholas explained. "I need someone who sees the world differently than I do, someone who will challenge me rather than simply agree with everything I say." He returned to his seat, his decision clearly made. "The job pays twice what the marketing position offered," Nicholas added, his businesslike tone returning, though something had fundamentally changed in the atmosphere between them. "You would start immediately." Lily felt as though she had stepped into an alternate reality, one where spilling coffee on a CEO's desk somehow led to a job offer rather than security escort. The rational part of her brain screamed that this made no sense. She'd come here hoping for an entry-level marketing position, not to work directly with the most intimidating executive in the city. But another part of her, the part that had always believed authenticity mattered more than perfection, recognized the rare opportunity before her. She stood at a crossroads, weighing embarrassment against opportunity, safety against risk. This impossible offer represented everything she hadn't dared to hope for, a chance to prove her worth, to bring her ideas directly to someone with the power to implement them, to transform a corporate culture from within. Option 3 captured it perfectly. While Lily had accepted Nicholas's unconventional job offer, crossing the threshold into Smith Global's executive sanctuary felt like entering a climate-controlled museum where emotions were prohibited artifacts. Yet somehow, within 3 months, this floor, once nicknamed the refrigerator by lower-level employees, would become the unexpected heart of company innovation and human connection. On her first official morning, Lily arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a perfectly appropriate navy suit she'd borrowed from a friend. She smoothed her hands over the fabric repeatedly, ensuring nothing was inside out or backward this time. As she settled at the assistant's desk, outside Nicholas's office, she couldn't help noticing the calculated glances from passing executives, clinical assessments that seemed to measure her shelf life in days rather than weeks. 2 weeks, muttered one executive to another as they passed, eyeing her like a foreign object that had mysteriously appeared in their pristine environment. The whispers followed her throughout that first morning. Senior staff members invented reasons to walk past her desk, their curiosity barely disguised as they studied the woman who had somehow captured the attention of their notoriously exacting CEO. Even with perfect attire, Lily's inherent whirlwind energy clashed with the methodical environment. By lunchtime, she had accidentally sent the quarterly projection report to the maintenance department, mixed up Nicholas's 11:30 and 2:15 meetings, and knocked over a container of paper clips that scattered across the immaculate floor like metallic confetti. With each mistake, she waited for the explosion, the harsh reprimand that would confirm everyone's predictions about her inevitable termination. Instead, something unexpected happened. Nicholas emerged from his office, observed the paperclip constellation forming at his feet, and simply asked, "Need a hand?" The collective intake of breath from witnesses was almost audible. The marketing director later confided to his deputy that he'd once seen Nicholas fire someone for stapling documents in the upper right corner rather than the left. As the first week progressed, Lily's mistakes continued. She put 3 sugars in Nicholas's coffee instead of none, scheduled a conference call during his sacrosanct thinking hour, and accidentally set his ringtone to a popular song that blared during a serious budget discussion. Yet each time, Nicholas responded with something approaching patience, a quality no one had previously associated with him. The executive team's confusion was palpable. During the weekly leadership meeting, the CFO actually raised her hand before speaking, something unnecessary but done out of habit, then asked Nicholas if he was feeling well when he didn't correct an analyst for going 2 minutes over his allotted presentation time. 3 department heads exchanged meaningful glances when Nicholas absent-mindedly tapped his pen to the rhythm of Lily's humming from the outer office. By the second week, subtle changes began appearing throughout the executive floor. A small potted plant materialized on Lily's desk, brightening the monochromatic landscape. Then another appeared near the elevator, followed by a third in the break room. Nicholas, who had once demanded the removal of a single holiday decoration as unnecessary visual distraction, didn't seem to notice, or more surprisingly, didn't seem to mind. In the third week came the first genuine laugh from behind Nicholas's closed door, a sound so unfamiliar that Ethan from accounting actually paused mid-stride, convinced he must have hallucinated it. By the following day, rumors circulated that Nicholas Smith, the man who once reviewed security footage to identify which employee had left a coffee mug in the conference room, had actually agreed to Lily's suggestion for Casual Friday, a concept previously considered heretical within the company's culture. The transformation accelerated in the coming weeks. Like spring, slowly thawing frozen ground, the executive floor began showing signs of life where sterility had reigned. The changes were small at first, an employee lingering by the coffee machine to chat instead of hurrying back to their desk, Nicholas asking about someone's weekend rather than immediately discussing deliverables, meetings occasionally running a few minutes over without triggering panic. 1 month into Lily's tenure, the marketing director's assistant brought cupcakes for her birthday. In the past, such celebrations were confined to lower floors, never contaminating the executive level with sugar and sentiment. Nicholas not only allowed it, but actually emerged from his office to wish her happy birthday by name, revealing he remembered personal details about his employees, a humanizing revelation that shocked everyone present. As if a permission slip had been signed for humanity, small changes continued appearing. Coffee conversations extended beyond weather forecasts to genuine exchanges. The head of design started bringing his dog to work on Fridays. Team members began proposing creative ideas in meetings rather than waiting for Nicholas's direction. The calibrated 68.5-degree temperature that had earned the floor its refrigerator nickname seemed to warm by degrees, though the thermostat remained untouched. Perhaps most telling was the transformation of Nicholas himself. The stopwatch precision of his schedule gradually relaxed. Meetings designed to run exactly 30 minutes might extend to 35 if an interesting discussion developed. He began appearing in the break room occasionally, pouring his own coffee instead of having it delivered. His legendary scowl, once as much a part of his appearance as his tailored suits, softened into something approaching neutrality, with occasional ventures into actual contentment. The executive team watched in fascination as Lily's natural transparency seemed to permeate Nicholas's carefully constructed walls. When she disagreed with him, She simply said so, without the calculated hedging that characterized most employee interactions with the CEO. Rather than punishing this honesty, Nicholas appeared to value it, often reconsidering positions after her straightforward challenges. By the third month, the data confirmed what observation had suggested. Employee satisfaction scores from quarterly surveys showed a 23% increase across departments. Absenteeism decreased, while productivity climbed. Most surprisingly, innovation metrics reached a 5-year high, with departments previously governed by rigid processes now producing creative solutions to long-standing problems. In a quarterly review meeting, Nicholas studied these statistics with his typical analytical precision, then made an unprecedented admission to his leadership team. "It appears I was wrong." The room fell silent as he continued. "I believed maximum efficiency required removing emotional variables from our environment. The evidence suggests otherwise." No one dared mention that the catalyst for this organizational metamorphosis was currently singing along to her earbuds while reorganizing the supply cabinet, completely unaware of her impact on the corporate culture. The woman who had once worn her dress inside out had somehow worn down the perfectly constructed walls of Smith Global from within. Nicholas found himself at his window again one afternoon, much like the day he'd first spotted Lily on the street below. This time, he wasn't watching chaos unfold, but reflecting on how embracing a certain kind of chaos had transformed something he thought was already perfected. The efficiency he had built hadn't been eliminated. It had been enhanced by the humanity Lily had reintroduced to the environment. Option 2 perfectly captured the moment. Just as Nicholas was beginning to appreciate the value of a little disorder in his life, a ghost from his meticulously organized past arrived without warning. The elevator doors parted on a Tuesday morning, and Ashley Montgomery stepped onto the executive floor with the practiced confidence of someone who believed every space belonged to her. In her Louboutin heels and impeccably tailored Chanel suit, Ashley moved through the office like she owned it, her perfume leaving a trail that seemed to mark her territory. Lily watched from her desk as the woman approached, noting how the other executives straightened their postures and put on their most impressive smiles. Whoever this visitor was, she clearly commanded respect, or perhaps fear, from everyone around her. "Nicholas, darling," Ashley's voice carried across the floor as she breezed past Lily, without so much as a glance. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Lily observed the immediate transformation in Nicholas. The man who had just minutes ago been discussing a marketing proposal with genuine interest suddenly stiffened, his expression hardening into the mask she hadn't seen in weeks. It was as if someone had flipped a switch, returning him to the cold automaton she'd first encountered. "Ashley," Nicholas responded, his voice now stripped of any warmth. "This is unexpected. I'm in the middle of several meetings." Ashley laughed lightly, touching his arm with manicured fingers that lingered possessively. "You always say that. Some things never change, do they?" She leaned closer, speaking just loud enough for Lily to hear. "Your mother mentioned you've been avoiding her calls about the Clayton merger. Daddy thinks it's a perfect opportunity to bring our family's interests even closer together." From her desk, Lily pretended to focus on her computer screen while watching the interaction unfold. The dynamic between them told a story, one of shared history and social expectations that seemed to weigh heavily on Nicholas. "The merger isn't something I'm interested in pursuing right now," Nicholas replied, subtly shifting away from Ashley's touch. "And my schedule is particularly full this quarter." Ashley's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, you'll have to make time soon. The charity gala is next weekend, and your parents are expecting both of us to attend." She adjusted his already perfect tie, another territorial gesture that made Lily wince. "I've already selected my dress, to match your usual black tie, of course." The mention of the gala visibly affected Nicholas. His jaw tightened, and Lily noticed the almost imperceptible tap of his index finger against his thigh. A nervous tick she'd only seen once before, during a particularly tense board meeting. "We'll discuss this later, Ashley," he said firmly, glancing toward his office door in clear dismissal. Ashley followed his gaze, finally acknowledging Lily's presence with a calculated assessment. "Is this your new assistant? How interesting. She's certainly different from Ethan." The way she emphasized different made it clear it wasn't a compliment. "Lily Morgan," Nicholas stated, his voice taking on a protective edge that surprised Lily. "She's been instrumental in our recent organizational improvements." Ashley's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "I'm sure she has." Her tone suggested otherwise. With a final lingering touch to Nicholas's shoulder, she turned to leave. "I'll text you the details for the gala. Your mother is quite excited to see us together again." As the elevator doors closed behind Ashley, Lily watched Nicholas retreat to his office without a word. Through the glass walls, she could see him pacing, something she'd never witnessed before. When his phone began lighting up repeatedly, he glanced at it with what could only be described as dread before turning it face down on his desk. 20 minutes passed with Nicholas behind closed doors before he finally called Lily in. She entered to find him standing by the window, his usual composed demeanor fractured. For the first time since she'd known him, Nicholas Smith looked genuinely rattled. "I apologize for that interruption," he began, running a hand through his usually immaculate hair. "Ashley has a talent for appearing at the most inconvenient times." Lily nodded, unsure what response was appropriate. "She seems determined." A humorless laugh escaped him. "That's an understatement." Nicholas turned from the window, his expression vulnerable, in a way Lily had never seen. "Ashley Montgomery and I have a complicated history. Our families have been business associates for generations, and there's always been an expectation that we would—" He trailed off, seeming uncomfortable with the words. "Merge?" Lily supplied, thinking of Ashley's earlier comment. Nicholas's eyes met hers, grateful for her understanding. "Precisely. We dated for 2 years, a relationship engineered more by our parents than by any genuine connection. I ended it 3 years ago when I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone cold, calculating, concerned only with appearances and status." Lily remained silent, sensing he needed to continue. "Since then, she's maintained this fiction that we're on some sort of break, rather than actually separated. Her family's connections make it complicated to completely sever ties." He glanced at his phone as it lit up again. "The annual charity gala she mentioned is next weekend. It's a significant social event where all the major business families gather. My parents will be there, expecting me to play my part in the carefully orchestrated social dance." Nicholas hesitated, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say next. The controlled CEO, who made billion-dollar decisions without blinking, was suddenly uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I can't face another night of Ashley's manipulations, the subtle comments about our shared future, the strategic positioning for photographs that will appear in the business press." His voice grew quieter. "The way she makes me feel like I'm back in that cold, empty version of myself." Lily felt a surge of compassion, seeing for the first time the social pressures that had shaped the man before her. "What are you going to do?" Nicholas took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders, as if preparing to propose a risky business strategy. "I have a proposition for you, Lily, one that goes beyond our professional relationship." She waited, curious and slightly apprehensive. "Would you consider attending the gala with me as my—" He seemed to search for the right word. "Date?" It would effectively neutralize Ashley's assumptions and give me some breathing room from her advances. Lily blinked in surprise, trying to process what he was asking. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I realize it's unconventional and well beyond your job description," Nicholas continued quickly. "I would compensate you additionally, of course, and provide everything you'd need for the event. If you're uncomfortable with the idea, I completely understand." "I'll do it," Lily interrupted, surprising herself with the immediacy of her answer. Nicholas stopped mid-sentence, genuine relief washing over his features. "You will?" Lily nodded, partly moved by his obvious distress and partly intrigued by the glimpse into his world this would provide. "On one condition," she added, a small smile forming. "No compensation. This isn't a job duty. It's one friend helping another." Something shifted in Nicholas's expression at the word friend, a softening around his eyes that transformed his entire face. "Thank you, Lily," he said simply, the gratitude in his voice more genuine than any business praise he'd ever offered. Option 3 captured the essence perfectly. Beneath the rules and rehearsals of high society, Nicholas discovered there was more to learn from Lily's authenticity than she could ever learn from his carefully constructed world. Again, instructed Madame Belcourt, the etiquette coach Nicholas had hired. Her voice carried the crisp precision of someone who had spent decades correcting the posture of reluctant socialites. Back straight, chin parallel to the floor, and glide. Don't stomp. Lily attempted the curtsy for what felt like the 100th time that afternoon, wobbling slightly as her knees bent. The elegant movement that Madame Belcourt demonstrated with effortless grace seemed impossible for Lily to replicate. I don't understand why I need to master a greeting that went out of style with corsets, she muttered, straightening her skirt. From across the room, Nicholas watched with an expression that had gradually softened over the 3 days of intensive training. Because my mother expects it, he explained, moving closer. The first time you meet her, she'll judge everything from your posture to your pronunciation. The crash course in high society had begun immediately after Lily agreed to attend the gala. Nicholas had transformed the private conference room on the executive floor into a makeshift finishing school, complete with a rotation of experts. There was Henri for wine knowledge, Edward for dance instruction, and the formidable Madame Belcourt for etiquette and deportment. The Vandermeer family sits on the hospital board, so they'll likely approach you, Nicholas explained during a break in training, spreading out photos of key attendees. Whatever you do, don't mention their daughter's recent divorce. The Pratts control shipping routes to Asia. They'll be at table 3, and Mrs. Pratt collects porcelain figurines, which is the only topic she finds acceptable for conversation. Lily's head spun with the intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and taboo topics. It's like preparing for a battle, she said, rubbing her temples. Nicholas's expression changed, a shadow passing over his features. That's exactly what it is. I've been fighting in this particular war since I was 7 years old, attending children's galas where we were expected to network before we could tie our own shoes. It was the first time he'd mentioned his childhood in such personal terms. Lily looked up, curious. What were you like as a kid? Before you became the robot? He supplied with a wry smile. I was going to say, before you became CEO, she corrected gently. Nicholas leaned against the table, his customary formality momentarily abandoned. I was quiet, observant, always afraid of disappointing my father. He paused, seemingly surprised by his own candor. I once spilled punch on the mayor's wife at a Christmas charity event when I was 9. My father didn't speak to me for 2 weeks afterward. Lily's expression softened. My dad would have helped me clean it up, and then probably spilled his own drink to make me feel better. Nicholas looked at her with newfound curiosity. Tell me about your family. We didn't have much, but we had laughter, Lily said, surprising herself with the sudden emotion in her voice. My mom worked double shifts as a nurse. Dad was a high school English teacher who quoted Shakespeare at breakfast. They taught me that kindness matters more than status. Something shifted in Nicholas's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or longing. The moment hung between them until Madame Belcourt clapped her hands sharply, announcing it was time to practice dining etiquette. The following day brought the most daunting challenge, ballroom dancing. Edward, the dance instructor, guided Lily through the basic waltz steps, while Nicholas observed from behind his laptop. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Edward counted, as Lily stumbled again, apologizing profusely. Perhaps Mr. Smith should demonstrate, Edward suggested, after an hour of limited progress. The gala will expect you to dance together, after all. Nicholas closed his laptop slowly, his expression unreadable as he approached. I haven't danced in years, he admitted quietly to Lily. Well, I've never danced properly in my life, so we're even, she whispered back. When Nicholas placed his hand at her waist, something electric passed between them. The formal posture suddenly felt intimate, rather than rigid. As Edward restarted the music, Nicholas guided her with surprising gentleness, his steps certain but adaptable to her hesitations. See, you're getting it, he murmured, as they completed their first successful turn. Just follow my lead. I thought you hired me because I don't just follow, Lily replied, a playful challenge in her voice. His laugh was soft and genuine. Touché. By the third day, Lily could identify 5 wine varieties blindfolded, navigate a formal table setting without hesitation, and dance a passable waltz. Yet the final hurdle remained, finding the perfect gown. The boutique Nicholas selected was the kind Lily would have previously walked past without daring to look in the windows. A discreet sales assistant guided them to a private showroom where champagne awaited, and dresses worth more than Lily's annual rent hung like artwork. "I'll wait here," Nicholas said, gesturing to a plush seating area. "Choose whatever you like." After trying 3 gowns that made her feel like an imposter, Lily emerged in a midnight blue creation that seemed to have been designed for her. The silhouette was elegant, but not overwrought, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light as she moved. When Nicholas looked up from his phone, the change in his expression was immediate and profound. He stood slowly, his eyes never leaving her. "Well?" Lily asked, uncharacteristically shy under his gaze. "Perfect," he said simply, but the weight of appreciation in that single word made her cheeks flush. The assistant discreetly mentioned the price, a sum that made Lily's eyes widen, but Nicholas simply handed over his card without comment. As they left the boutique, Lily's anxiety about the approaching gala intensified. "What if I mess up? What if I embarrass you in front of everyone who matters to you?" Nicholas stopped walking and turned to face her. "Listen to me, Lily. The people at this gala, they don't actually matter to me. They never have." His voice carried a surprising rawness. "I've spent my entire life trying to meet their expectations, and all it's done is turn me into someone I don't recognize anymore." He took a breath, continuing with quiet intensity. "When you attend this gala, yes, follow the rules we've practiced, but please, don't lose what makes you, you. Your authenticity is why I—" He stopped abruptly, then continued more carefully. "It's what makes you valuable, not just as my assistant, but as a person." The night before the gala, Lily practiced walking in her new heels around her apartment, repeating the names of industry leaders and their spouses. Her phone chimed with a text from Nicholas. "You'll be wonderful. Just be yourself, the version that knows which fork to use." She smiled at the unexpected humor, recognizing how much he'd changed in the weeks since she'd burst into his life. Option 3 captured the moment perfectly. The rules of their arrangement had been clear from the beginning. Pretend to be in love, keep emotions at bay, maintain professional boundaries, until an elevator malfunction changed everything. In those suspended moments between floors, Nicholas and Lily would discover that some feelings can't be rehearsed or controlled, no matter how perfect the performance. The gala had exceeded all expectations. Against the backdrop of crystal chandeliers and classical music, Lily had navigated the treacherous waters of high society with surprising grace. Yes, she'd accidentally used the wrong fork during the first course and laughed a bit too loudly at an ambassador's joke, but these small imperfections only seemed to endear her to the crowd, particularly Nicholas's usually stoic parents. As they stepped into Nicholas's sleek company car after midnight, a comfortable silence fell between them, both processing the evening's unexpected success. "I still can't believe your mother invited me to lunch next week," Lily said, as they pulled up to the Smith Global building. Nicholas had insisted on stopping by his office to retrieve some documents before taking her home. "I thought she'd see right through our charade." Nicholas smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. "I've brought 6 different women to these events over the years. You're the first one she's ever wanted to see again." He didn't elaborate further, but Lily could sense the weight behind his words. The building was eerily quiet at this hour. Their footsteps echoed across the marble lobby as the night security guard nodded respectfully, buzzing them through to the executive elevator. Standing closer than necessary in the empty elevator, Lily was acutely aware of Nicholas beside her, his cologne mingling with the faint scent of the event's roses, still clinging to her borrowed designer dress. "You were magnificent tonight," Nicholas said softly, breaking the silence as the elevator began its ascent. His voice held a warmth she'd never heard before, lacking the measured control he typically maintained. Before Lily could respond, the elevator shuddered, lights flickering momentarily before stabilizing at half brightness. The carriage jerked to an abrupt halt, throwing Lily slightly off balance. Nicholas's hand shot out to steady her, his palm warm against her bare shoulder. "Are we stuck?" Lily asked, though the answer was obvious, as Nicholas reached for the emergency phone. After a brief conversation, he hung up with a sigh. "Maintenance is on their way, but it could be 20 minutes. The night crew is skeletal." He loosened his bow tie with one finger, a small crack in his perfect appearance. "I suppose there are worse places to be stranded." Lily leaned against the mirrored wall, kicking off her painful heels. "At least we're not trapped with Ashley Montgomery. I saw her watching us all night, like she was plotting my mysterious disappearance." Nicholas laughed, the sound bouncing off the elevator walls. "You handled her beautifully. I've never seen her so thrown off guard." He hesitated, then added, "No one's ever defended me quite like that before." "You mean when I mentioned her company's questionable environmental practices in Indonesia?" Lily grinned. "What can I say? I did my research." "That's not part of standard gala etiquette training," Nicholas said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Neither is wearing the same shoes for more than an hour without wanting to amputate your feet. But here we are." Lily wiggled her toes in relief. The elevator's emergency lights cast long shadows across their faces, creating an intimate cocoon between floors, separated from the outside world. In this strange liminal space, the carefully constructed walls between employer and employee, between their fake relationship and whatever was growing beneath it, seemed thin. Nicholas slid down to sit on the floor, his impeccably tailored tuxedo contrasting with the casual posture. After a moment's hesitation, Lily joined him. Their shoulders nearly touched. "What did you want to be when you grew up?" Nicholas asked suddenly. "Before marketing and coffee disasters and inside-out dresses?" Lily tilted her head, surprised by the personal question. "A storyteller. My dad would read to me every night, not just children's books, but passages from classics, poetry, myths. I wanted to create worlds with words." She glanced at him sideways. "What about you? Were you born in a three-piece suit, with a quarterly report in hand?" Nicholas's laugh was softer this time, tinged with something that might have been regret. "I wanted to build things, not companies, actual structures, bridges, skyscrapers. I used to sketch designs instead of taking notes in class." He paused. "My father found my notebooks when I was 14. He explained that Smiths don't build things. They own the companies that hire people to build things." "And you never tried to pursue it?" Lily asked. "Some paths are chosen for us," he replied, but without bitterness. "Though lately, I've been wondering." "What?" Nicholas turned to face her directly. "If I've been living someone else's vision instead of creating my own." The confession hung between them, raw and honest, in a way their previous interactions had never been. In the muted light, Nicholas's face appeared younger, unburdened by the weight of expectations he carried daily. "You know," Lily said gently, "it's never too late to start sketching again." Nicholas studied her face with an intensity that made her heart quicken. "That's what you've shown me these past weeks. Possibilities I'd forgotten existed." His voice dropped lower. "You've changed everything, Lily. The office, the company." He hesitated. "Me." The absence of external distractions in the confined space allowed for an emotional intimacy they might have avoided otherwise. Every slight movement seemed magnified. Nicholas shifting imperceptibly closer, Lily tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, their breathing gradually synchronizing in the quiet elevator. "This wasn't part of our arrangement," Lily whispered, her eyes meeting his. The pretense they'd maintained was dissolving in the honesty of the moment. "No," Nicholas agreed, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips. "It wasn't." The air between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken feelings, the culmination of weeks of growing connection. Nothing in Lily's etiquette training had prepared her for this moment, the genuine attraction that had been building beneath the surface of their staged relationship. Nicholas reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. "Tell me if I'm misreading this," he murmured. Lily answered by closing the distance between them. Their lips met tentatively at first, a question rather than a statement. Then, as though a dam had broken, the kiss deepened, weeks of suppressed feelings finally finding expression. Nicholas's hand threaded through her hair, while Lily's fingers gripped the lapel of his jacket, anchoring herself to this unexpected reality. The kiss was nothing like the practiced, performative affection they'd displayed at the gala. This was raw, unscripted, and undeniably real. The truth beneath their carefully constructed facade. Just as Nicholas pulled her closer, the elevator jerked suddenly, lights brightening as the system reactivated. They broke apart, slightly breathless, as the carriage resumed its ascent with mechanical indifference to the moment it had interrupted. Reality crashed back as the elevator chimed, announcing their arrival at the executive floor. Neither moved as the doors slid open, revealing the empty corridor beyond. The spell of their suspended moment was broken, leaving them to face what had just happened and what it meant for their relationship, both professional and personal. "Lily, Nicholas began, but she placed her fingers gently against his lips. "Not here," she said softly. "Not yet." And so, the elevator door opens to a love story unlike any other, one that began with a dress worn inside out and ends with hearts turned right side in. Perhaps this is what makes Nicholas and Lily's connection so powerful. As relationship experts say, true love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about learning to love an imperfect person perfectly. Their story reminds us that behind the polished facades we present to the world lie our authentic selves, waiting for someone brave enough to embrace them. In Nicholas's cold office, Lily's chaos brought warmth. In Lily's uncertain life, Nicholas's steadiness brought peace. Together, they discovered that imperfection isn't something to hide, it's something to celebrate.